Hey, this is a Richard Sherman podcast brought to you by Super Draft Fantasy, the official fantasy partner of Caesar Rewards. To all my PFF listeners, it's time to get hooked up when you play. Get a $10 bonus when you deposit 10 by using the code PFF at registration. Just download Super Draft and start playing games like Super 15. Get your hands on some cash prizes, Caesar Rewards credits, and more. We're even hooking you up with free PFF Elite subscription when you sign up. Just download the Super Draft app on Apple or Play Store. Use the code PFF when you create an account, deposit $10, and get a free PFF Elite subscription. The offer is only eligible for new accounts. Sorry, everybody who's already subscribed, but new accounts, it's exciting. Super Draft paid fantasy contests are available in 34 states. Must be 18 or older to play. Paid contests in most states. Visit superdraft.io for all eligibility restrictions.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. Don't you ever talk about me.
Picked off. It is Richard Sherman.
It's picked off by Sherman. Now, buckle up. Here he goes.
And it is intercepted by Richard Sherman. Broken up. Picked off. This game is over.
All right. Welcome to the Richard Sherman podcast. Another day, another episode, another week. The season's over. What is there to talk about now, Mitchell? What is there to talk about now?
Well, Richard, you were a hot name in the media. Some people loved you, some people didn't love you, which is pretty much par for the course with, I think they forgot how active you are on Twitter. And over the years, you like doing this, you like starting conversations on Twitter, but I agree with you, man. I mean, let's start off the discussion with the Super Bowl and most specifically Matthew Stafford and your commentary about how you think the Hall of Fame is becoming a little bit weak in their analysis and just basically giving it to anybody. I mean, expand on that a little bit here.
Well, I mean, we can congratulate the Rams and Matt Stafford and all those guys. And, the Rams did a great job. They won a Super Bowl. Congrats to them. But in terms of what we were talking about, the Hall of Fame discussion is just the way they lowered the bar for quarterbacks in this day and age. And, everybody's like, oh, man, he's top 10 in yards. He's top in this. And it's like, I hear you. But in this day and age, you're going to see every record broken in the history of the game. Every record in football will be broken except for some of Tom's because he played through multiple generations, multiple eras, and nobody will play that long. But I think the argument that people have been making as if like the Super Bowl win was going to solidify his candidacy. And that's the part I didn't understand because you got more Hall of Fame eligible Hall of Fame. I mean, right now, if we're lowering the bar like that, we could say Jalen Ramsey is a Hall of Famer, surefire on that team. There's probably 4 or 5 Hall of Famers just on that team more deserving than him on the Rams. There's probably 4 or 5. Whitworth, multiple All-Pros, a lot of Pro Bowls, Super Bowl now. Hall of Fame. Jalen Ramsey right now, 3-time All-Pro. I did 4 or 5-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion. Hall of Fame. Aaron Donald, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. I think 8-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro. Hall of Fame. Like when you have guys with those kind of resumes and then you throw in 1 Pro Bowl, Super Bowl champion, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't align with what everybody else has done. And everybody's like, oh man, over the next couple years, he's not young in his career and he's not hot. Like he's not Pat Mahomes. He's not Herbert. He's not Burrows. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. Like Deshaun Watson still is in the picture, in the discussion. And that's the part that I just don't understand. Like I'm not speaking like, hey man, I'm giving in my opinion, an objective opinion about the situation. There has to be a standard. There has to be like barriers. There has to be things where you say, hey, these guys were incredibly special during their era. You can't, Hall of Famers, you don't have to qualify. You don't have to qualify Hall of Famers and say, hey, well, I mean, if these guys weren't playing, he probably would have been the best to play in this era. No, you don't say that about Hall of Famers. You don't say that about Aaron Donald. You don't say if Aaron Donald played in a different generation, he would have been a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. You say Aaron Donald was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. You don't say, hey, if J.J. Watt wasn't around, this guy was J.J. Watt, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Like, Hall of Famers look like Hall of Famers. They sound like Hall of Famers. Their whole career, you're like, damn, these guys were dominant. Or they were the best at a particular time during the decade they played. Pretty straightforward.
Richard, being a Detroiter, born and raised in Detroit, you feel for Matthew Stafford. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and his family. They've done so much around here in Detroit. I mean, you drive down the expressway, they've dedicated hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in building out these beautiful facilities, for kids in the inner city. Like, it's just, they've done amazing things. Him and his wife and his family have done so much around Detroit, and they are loved here. And that's why you saw everybody, giving him the respect that he so deserved in that playoff run. Everyone wanted it for him because they saw that he was bruised and battered here in Detroit. But at the end of the day, Rich, my thoughts align with you in the standpoint that when you think of a Hall of Famer, to me, like, even stemming back to when we were little kids, when you think of a Hall of Famer, you think of a legend. You think of somebody that put their team on their back, that was the best player at some point in time at their position. Maybe not the best, but at least top 3, right?
Right.
Matthew Stafford played in the city of Detroit for 12 seasons. They did not win a single playoff game. In my mind, a legend, somebody, especially at the quarterback position, because there's not one player on the field that dictates or impacts the win more than the quarterback does. They played you guys in Seattle first round. I don't think Detroit made it past the 50-yard line in that game with you guys years ago. I mean, the one season they got robbed against the Dallas Cowboys, and they had a very good team there. But Richard, I'm going to take it a step back. They didn't win the division once in 12 years. And I get it. You're dealing with Aaron Rodgers, one of the all-time greats, and he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But come on, man. There's been a couple seasons that Aaron Rodgers missed multiple games. And specifically in the 11-5 year against the Dallas Cowboys with the phantom pass interference call, the Detroit Lions had an excellent opportunity to win that division. They lost like their last 3 or 4 games, including the Hail Mary from Aaron Rodgers in Ford Field. So I have a really hard time understanding how someone is just guaranteed to make the Hall of Fame when they literally are nothing more than statistics. I love Matthew Stafford as a Detroit Lions fan. However, when I think of him, is Carson Palmer a Hall of Famer? Because you look at his accolades, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler. He made the All-Pro team. He's got about the same yardage that Matthew had. He played for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And then he went on to the Cardinals and had more success with a more stacked roster. I mean, it's a very similar career path, right? And it's, to me, and you said it right out of the gates, you take Matthew Stafford from arguably the worst team in the NFL, certainly the worst organization in the NFL, and you put him on a team that is going for it all right here and now, that has got the GM that doesn't care about draft picks, that only cares about winning, and he's just stacked this roster. All you got to go out there is go and play capable football, be a good team manager. I'm convinced Kirk Cousins could have won a Super Bowl this year.
Mitchell, they make too many excuses for him. Like, every excuse you make for Matthew Stafford, you could have made for Joe Burrow when he came in. Hey, he doesn't have a chance, man. He's in Cincinnati. They never play anybody. They don't get any free agents. They don't do this. He had the worst offensive line probably to ever grace a Super Bowl. The man made a Super Bowl. He's going to have a chance to have a Hall of Fame career because people are going to say, hey, he didn't care about the circumstances, because Hall of Famers overcome circumstance. Hall of Famers make you say, man, how the heck did he get the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl? That's a Hall of Famer. Like, who knows if he will continue? He has to hold it over time. But that's the kind of stuff you say. That's the kind of stuff that is apparent. Like, when you sit there and say, make excuses, you don't make excuses for Hall of Famers. You don't sit there and say, hey, if you played in a different division or if you played in a different era, man, if you would have got drafted by somebody else, like, that doesn't make sense. He had a Hall of Fame receiver, like, playing on the exact same team as him. Like, that's what people are sitting there like, man, he did all this. He threw it up into triple coverage to Calvin Johnson a ton of times. And Calvin Johnson made him look good because Calvin Johnson is a Hall of Famer. Like, stop having this discussion. Like, oh, it was Detroit. They're like, well, a running back with a bad O-line can't be a Hall of Famer. Barry Sanders, same Detroit. Like, Hall of Fame behind bad O-line on terrible teams. They shine. They look different. They make their teams look different. Regardless of circumstances, they overcome. Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Fair. It's not the Hall of Feel Good. It's the Hall of Fame. Like, if you haven't won individual awards in your time playing, how are you going to get the ultimate individual award? The ultimate, hey, you're one of the greatest to ever play. Like, if you weren't the greatest to play during the time you were playing, you weren't even top 5 most times. But we're going to give you an individual honor saying you're one of the best to ever play this game. Even though during the time you were playing, you weren't the best at any time. Not one first-team All-Pro, not one second-team All-Pro, not one MVP, not one Super Bowl MVP. And people think, oh, he's with the Rams now. Well, these quarterbacks aren't going anywhere. Josh Allen isn't going anywhere. Pat Mahomes isn't going anywhere. First-team and second-team All-Pro honors are not coming up anytime soon. These young kids are just getting better. I'm sure Herbert will get him one. Burrows will get him one. Like, these young kids aren't going anywhere. And in terms of Pro Bowls, Aaron Rodgers is still around. So if you're saying, hey, man, I can't do it until Aaron Rodgers is gone, I don't know. What are we talking about?
Richard, that's the problem I have. I mean, Jared Goff made the Super Bowl with essentially the same team, with the healthy Todd Gurley, right? And granted, they didn't win it, but still, I mean, I think we can all agree that Matthew Stafford is an obvious upgrade over Jared Goff. But still, Jared Goff made the Super Bowl with this team. And as you pointed out, if Jaquiski Tartt intercepts that ball, more than likely than not, the Rams are going home. You know, I mean, same thing with Cincinnati in that Super Bowl. I mean, there were, granted, 2 interceptions, but still, Cincinnati hung around in that game. And then there's, you know, some questionable officiating on both sides of the ball. We're not going to discount the play against Jalen Ramsey right off to start the second half. But in crucial times, there was some phantom calls that certainly opened the floodgates again for Matthew Stafford. So not to discount it, and from my opinion, he's got plenty of years left in this league, and he's going to put up some ridiculous statistics in a passing era, right? I mean, if this was 20 years ago, he's handing the ball off a heck of a lot more. So these statistics are, like you said, era relevant. But I guess my question for you is, at what point does he become a Hall of Famer? What does he have to prove? And I hate to put it just on him. This is more of a conversations amongst all quarterbacks.
No, but it's not. It's not. That's what Hall of Fame is. Hall of Fame is not a team award. Like, football is a team sport, but Hall of Fame isn't a team award. It's an individual award. It goes to individuals who perform outstanding during the time that they played. They are one of the best, obviously one of the best to play during the time they played. Those are usually Hall of Famers. People were arguing Kurt Warner. People on Twitter were sitting there saying, how did Kurt Warner? Kurt Warner had 2 MVPs. Like, what are we talking about? You're talking about a guy with 1 Pro Bowl, period, versus a guy with 2 MVPs of the league.
Right out of the grocery store too, Rich.
One of the craziest stories in the history of the game.
I can't even believe anyone would argue that. I mean, that again, now you're talking about a quarterback that I don't know how long the Rams' greatest show on turf was truly relevant, but man, it seemed like it was a good 5-year period there. They were just dicing teams up left and right, and he was at the front and center helm of that. Right. So that's just it for me. I mean, that's it. I get it. The excuse of the Detroit Lions being a sorry franchise, I'll give you Matthew Stafford. That is bad luck. I wish he would have an opportunity to start his career with literally any other organization.
That's not it for me, because Cincinnati Bengals are equally as bad franchise. They're as equally or worse franchise, and they spend less money. They don't have an indoor facility. They don't have any. They're the only NFL team in a cold weather state that doesn't have an indoor. Like, we're talking about a team who doesn't pay free agents, doesn't guarantee money, literally puts their team in the worst possible position each and every year, spends the least amount of money in free agency per year, and a quarterback who's in his second year off an ACL just took them to the Super Bowl. Like, that's the difference between a guy you make excuses for and a guy who could potentially be a Hall of Famer. Like, because you don't have to make excuses for him. We didn't have to say, man, Joe Burrows, man, if he was just somewhere other than Cincinnati, like, man, they would probably freaking win the Super Bowl. He's in Cincinnati. He took a rookie receiver. Rookie receivers breaking records. Sure, the rookie receiver is probably on his way to being a very, very, very special player. But it wasn't like this kid was just, oh, man, he's back there behind an all-pro line, and it's just the number one defense in the league. This guy made it happen. And that's the difference, and that's the thing that frustrates me the most, is because we sit here and get upset that it's just not happening. Like, what would he have to do? He'd have to make the all-pro team 3 or 4 times in the next 5-6 years. He'd have to be the best in the game over the next 5-6 years, because this would be the first period that he's been in that position over his career. So if he's not in that position, then at no point in his career was he ever considered one of the best. So at no point in his career was he ever considered a Hall of Famer. So unless you're saying, hey, you can be the 5th, 6th, 7th best at your position, 8th best at your position, and just get a lot of yards, get a lot of stats, and you're a Hall of Famer. The rest doesn't matter. You don't have to get an All-Pro. You don't have to get no Pro Bowls. You don't have to win no MVPs. Don't worry about playing great football, leading your team to championships. Don't worry about any of that. If you just play long enough, get a lot of yards, go Jack Pete.
Yeah. Again, I think we're on the same page here, Rich. It's amazing to me that it's kind of come to this. And it's shocking to me how many people, I guess, sided against you. You saw a lot of the Twitter polls, and there were a lot of them. Do you agree with Richard Sherman? And it seemed like, honestly, the overwhelming majority, it was 65% had agreed with you. But there are some passionate people that disagree with you. And it's just, I guess my question comes, how does this change? And why aren't more, who votes for the Hall of Fame, and why can't we get more players involved? Like, players that played in that era, because Richard, it holds a hell of a lot more weight coming from your mouth, a multiple All-Pro, multiple Pro Bowl, Super Bowl champion cornerback who played against these quarterbacks and can truthfully say, this guy was a problem. And I remember you saying that about Patrick Mahomes first time he played him. It's like you were able to spot these guys. Odell Beckham Jr., I remember your commentary on him first time you played against him. That kid is different. And it's like, hearing it from the player's mouth is a much better perspective than a media member. You
think about the guys waiting right now: Zach Thomas, freaking Pat Willis, freaking Devin Hester, guys who obviously were the best during the time they played. It wasn't even a question. It's like, hey, Pat Willis only played 7 years, 7-time Pro Bowl. Like, Pro Bowl every year that he played, rookie of the year, top 5 defenses, multiple years. Like, one of the greatest linebackers to play. If he would have played longer, he'd have a discussion for being one of the greatest, the greatest. And Bobby Wagner, Hall of Famer. Like, nobody talks about this enough. Hall of Famer, 7-time All-Pro, it might be 7-time first-team All-Pro. It's something crazy like that. But 8-time Pro Bowler, that's what a Hall of Fame looks like. That's what, and then people are going to argue his Hall of Fame.
There's no argument with Bobby Wagner.
Argument. He's a clear, undisputed Hall of Fame.
In my opinion, Richard, at least from like the non-football player's perspective, if you're able to flip on a highlight reel or just watch general tape of somebody and you can say, wow, that is how you play the position. When you watch tape on Bobby Wagner, there is no doubt in your mind, that guy is a perennial Pro Bowler, future first ballot Hall of Famer. He plays his position so well. And for somebody that doesn't know the middle linebacker position, to just flip on YouTube and watch his watch his highlight reel. It is unbelievably impressive.
And that's the kind of stuff that frustrates me, because he won't have a hard time getting in. But you're telling me guys that have Hall of Fame resumes right now, Pat Willis, Zach Thomas, freaking Devin Hester, are not walking into it. Shit, Asante Samuels hasn't gotten in. Like, and it's so frustrating to hear, and that's why it's frustrating for me. You know what I mean? People are like, well, you don't know if you're going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't. I'm not saying I am. I'm not saying I'm not. You know, that's up to other people to decide. But it's frustrating to see guys who I watched, who should be in the Hall of Fame, not go in. And that's frustrating. Devin Hester not going in was criminal. First ballot.
Richard, if you don't go first ballot, and I know I'm biased, but I would be wildly confused. I mean, you led your generation in interceptions, right? I mean, you've been to the Super Bowl 3 times. You went to the Super Bowl with teams that, I mean, let's be honest, when you went to Seattle, right? Seattle wasn't this esteemed franchise. They were the team that was the quiet Pacific Northwest. You brought some noise there. You and the Legion of Boom did. And you helped change the mindset of the fan base. I mean, the fan base has always been insane. They've been an exceptional fan base for years, but you have turned it up a notch, right? I mean, and then you go to the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, solid team. But even I questioned you a little bit when you're like, I'm going to San Fran. They got a shot to win the title. I'm like, how? Like, how? They're in the bottom of the division right now. And you're like, trust me, I believe in Jimmy G. I believe in Kyle. I believe in John Lynch. And lo and behold, second year in, as soon as you're healthy, you're one of the faces of that defense, certainly the vocal leader on that defense, and you go to the Super Bowl. In my mind, a Hall of Famer, again, from non-football player perspective, it's like the Heisman. You've got to have multiple Heisman moments. You've got to have multiple Hall of Fame moments throughout your career. Richard, you've had those. So for anyone to debate that, the ultimate pinnacle of success is championships. And you can't necessarily control, everyone playing perfectly on Super Bowl Sunday, but just getting there 3 times and winning one of them, that is unbelievably impressive. And especially at your position at cornerback, because you're not the quarterback. You don't have as much control and I guess impact in terms of winning the game. But for you to go there and change two defenses on different teams, Rich, I don't know how much better you can get than that.
Well, I appreciate that, Mitch. That's really humbling for you to say, and I'm grateful. But but I mean, but you're right. You're right, and that's what it's supposed to take. It's supposed to take like a guy that makes it difference, huge difference. Like Cam Chancellor, you know what I mean? Cam Chancellor should be a Hall of Famer. He should have been all decade team. He should have been all that. Like it's gonna take. Like there are going to be some really, really tough discussions, and they're going to have to be a little bit more transparent with this Hall of Fame process. Because there are certain guys that need to get in, and certain guys that have gotten in that shouldn't have got in. And I mean, it's been disappointing, but we'll see how it goes.
Richard, I'm going to expand on the Cam stuff a little bit here, and it relates to you too. It's kind of like the Steph Curry effect. Before you played corner, right? Most cornerbacks, a 6'3" corner was unheard of. Like, you're too big. You don't have the hip fluidity, whatever. Like, it's just too big of a position for you to be at. Same thing with Cam. I mean, dude, like, here's a guy. He literally changed the safety position. Was the most feared hitting safety probably in the last decade, at least. You know, if not well beyond that. Like, if you two are difference makers in the sense that you change the way people look at the position now. Now you see a lot of other guys coming out of college that are 6'3", 6'4", trying to play the cornerback position, and people are saying, oh, this is the next Richard Sherman. Well, if you're the next Richard Sherman or Steph Curry or Cam Chancellor, then that's obviously singing some high praise. So in my opinion, yeah, Cam, obviously he should get it at some point. Unfortunately, the neck injury is what people are going to question, but you guys already did your damage. You already put everything on tape. Was he a 4-time Pro Bowler? Like, what else can you possibly ask of someone playing at that position?
Right, and got a few All Pros. And it's just one of those things that I think going to come down to the wire. But let's move forward. We'll talk about a little bit about free agency because I don't think they're going to let Davante Adams go anywhere. I know it sounds fun. Everybody's like, "Oh man, Davante go here, Davante go here." I think it's gonna be interesting because what Aaron decides. I think Green Bay will still try to hold Davante Adams even if Aaron goes elsewhere. I think that hopefully this year Allen Robinson, gets to go somewhere fun and we get to see him shine, like he should, like the elite receiver he is. The cornerback market is going to be interesting because how people see Gilmore. Gilly has been fantastic over his entire career. And I look forward to seeing what market he ends up with. I expect him to go West Coast and, either Seattle or San Francisco to scoop him up and him to thrive. J.C. Jackson, isn't feeling the respect from New England for obvious reasons. And I expect him to get to a franchise and have, continue his success,
Let's look at the wide receiver position because it seems like it's a good free agent class. You already hit on Davante Adams. I mean, your former teammate Chris Godwin coming off the ACL injury. Then you got OBJ coming off the ACL injury. How much do you think, the timing of those injuries and just at the point, there's similar points in their career, how much do you think that impacts their market value?
It's going to have a huge impact. They're going to have likely, unless Chris comes back to Tampa Bay where he's a pivotal piece. I think we go to the Super Bowl, if he's healthy. I think we go to the Super Bowl and probably come away with the win. He was that important to the offense. So I think the familiarity there and the trust and the understanding of his work ethic and who he is obviously makes him a lot more valuable in Tampa Bay, especially coming off the ACL, because they know who he is. They know the guy. They know how valuable, how important he is, how great he is in the locker room and things like that. So I think they're going to give him a fair offer. I think if he goes elsewhere, somewhere who doesn't know him, I just don't know. It's up to each GM. He doesn't have a huge injury history, but guys, they aren't paying a ton for guys coming off ACLs right now.
And now how about OBJ? I know he's already said he's willing to take a pay cut, and with the Rams, it looks like he might be forced to be now because of the timing of the injury. I mean, even if he is able to rehab and come back, healthy quickly, like where does that put him? I mean, you've been in a similar setting with the Achilles injury. Like how much does that impact your off season?
It's the biggest thing here. That's all his off season is rehab. He's rehab. And he won't get to show them he's healthy. He won't, so I'm sure a lot of his deal, a lot of his guarantees will be based on him being healthy for training camp or for the first game, et cetera, et cetera. And if he's not, then the money probably goes down. I'm sure there's incentives that he'll have to reach coming off that injury. It won't just be a straightforward, clean cut, deal like he would have got if he would have got through the Super Bowl healthy. He was dominant. He was dominating, throughout the entire playoffs. He looked like his old self. So he was going to get really good receiver money. And, coming off this, it's just so sad to hear, because I don't know if he's going to get that same deal coming off the ACL just because that's the nature of the beast.
Hey, this is a Richard Sherman podcast brought to you by Super Draft Fantasy, the official fantasy partner of Caesar Rewards. To all my PFF listeners, it's time to get hooked up when you play. Get a $10 bonus when you deposit 10 by using the code PFF at registration. Just download Super Draft and start playing games like Super 15. Get your hands on some cash prizes, Caesar Rewards credits, and more. We're even hooking you up with free PFF Elite subscription when you sign up. Just download the Super Draft app on Apple or Play Store. Use the code PFF when you create an account, deposit $10, and get a free PFF Elite subscription. The offer is only eligible for new accounts. Sorry, everybody who's already subscribed, but new accounts, it's exciting. Super Draft paid fantasy contests are available in 34 states. Must be 18 or older to play. Paid contests in most states. Visit superdraft.io for all eligibility restrictions.
All right, welcome again to the Super Draft Super 15 contest. It's the offseason, so no football. We're going basketball. Mitchell, what you got?
Richard, we all know you're a huge basketball fan. I am also a basketball fan. I unfortunately live in Detroit, where my sports teams absolutely suck. We have the Detroit Pistons, who had the number 1 overall pick and are currently second worst in the league. However, we have a good slate of other games. And Richard and I, going forward through the rest of the offseason, are going to be picking over-unders on players throughout the rest of the year. So we got 3 options here that we got to pick. So LaMelo Ball going against the Raptors, over under 19.5. I'm going to go under. Awesome player, but why not? We're going to go under because I know what Richard's going to go over. The Heat, over under Heat, Jimmy Butler, over under 20.5 against the Knicks. Let's go over 22 points from Jimmy tonight. And then James Harden, new 76er, over under 21.5 against the T-Wolves. He's had a little bit too much time off. I'm going to go with the under of that.
Okay. I hear you, Mitch. LaMelo Ball, I got him going over 19.5. He's a showman. He wants to put on a show. He's going to do that. Jimmy Butler, I really want to go with you because I mean, he's in the Garden. Jimmy is a playmaker, a scorer, but I'll go under. I'll go under 20. And let's James Harden's going to score. James Harden's first game back. He's going to get to the free throw line. He's going to get his points. He's going over 21. It's obvious. And now it's time for you guys to spend your offseason picking, see who you go with, over and under. You can trust me, you can trust Mitchell, but I'm going to get the win.
Doubtful.
So make sure for you guys that are new, who don't have the app downloaded, Super Draft app, offer only eligible for new accounts. See you next week.
Richard, and then we're looking at some teams trying to navigate some serious cap hell situations. And you already talked about it with Mike Robb when he was on a couple of weeks ago with the Saints having to pay the piper. And now we're seeing the Green Bay Packers, who are, $40+ million over the cap, trying to restructure deals. And I know they just restructured Kenny Clark and Aaron Jones. And, how much does that kicking the can down the road? Like, how does that affect the franchise?
I don't know. I mean, ask the Rams. The Rams have been doing it for years.
They just won the title. Maybe that's the ticket.
That's the ticket. I mean, because they're playing to win it now. They're not playing to win it in 10 years, and they're anticipating the cap bubbling later on down the line, as it will. But they're in a tough spot. Well, I don't expect.
You and I talked about it too, because the 49ers were entering that similar situation where now they have to pay Debo and Fred Warner and like all these important pieces. And that's why I asked you last year, once they traded, the first round pick and moved up and got Trey Lance. It's like, I asked him, like, dude, why would they do? It seems like they gave up a lot. And your response to me was what?
First round picks are expensive. They don't need the money. They need cap relief. And they got that. They get that when they trade first round picks. It's seeming like they'll trade Jimmy G and get some cap relief there. They'll probably take some of the money that Jimmy G was making and give it to a corner of Gilmore or J.C. Jackson and solidify that defense. They already have the front. They're still paying D Ford, which frustrates a lot of fans. But I mean, he at the time he deserved the money that he got. And it happens like that. Injuries happen. Football is a dangerous sport. But I still think they have a great window. A lot of it is going to rest on Trey Lance's shoulders, how good he can execute Kyle's offense down the stretch under a ton of pressure. But once they trade Jimmy G, they're saying they're all in on Trey Lance. Even if they get Mariota or Tyrod as a backup, they're putting all their chips on the rook. He'll be a second-year guy then, but they're putting all their chips in on the guy, and win, lose, or draw, that. Their fortunes will rest on 5.
We've also, obviously, with the off season, one part is free agency, the other part is the NFL draft, and the NFL combine's coming up.
The worst thing ever.
Yeah, give me your lowdown on what it was like. Rookie out of Stanford entering the NFL combine. What was going through your head? What do these guys have to prepare for?
Well, I mean, coming out of Stanford, I didn't get a combine invite. I went and got a Senior Bowl invite after Prince Amukamara didn't play in it. And I played well, during the practices and got a combine invite from that. You're so excited. You're so looking for it. You always hear about it. You see it, it's all glorified. You're like, man, the combine. Then you get there and it's terrible. It's terrible. You don't get sleep. You don't get to eat. You don't rest. You don't get to warm up properly. They kind of stretch everything out so terribly. People are like, man, why didn't he perform well? It's like, well, because they woke him up at 4 a.m. They didn't let him go to sleep till 1 o'clock. Drug test him, kept him out of his room all day. Don't let him work out at any time because he's sitting around either talking to coaches, weighing in, measuring, doing something. then when it gets to time to compete, to run, you haven't run in 3 days, you haven't worked out, unless you're working out in your hallway, which is tough. And they split the group. So some guys do the field stuff, so the vertical, broad jump, et cetera, shuttle. And then some guys do the 40. So the guys that don't do the 40 have to wait probably an hour or 2 hours before they can actually do the 40. So they'll warm up to do all the rest of the stuff, and then they'll sit around for 2 hours or try to keep warm and then go run a 40-yard dash, and the other guys vice versa. So it's not ideal conditions by any means for anybody to perform well. You got to go through every doctor that's going to push and prod on injuries that you used to have or you had before. Hey, you sprained your ankle. We're going to try to re-sprain it. Like, how does that feel? Does it hurt? Nope. Oh, you tore your ACL. 6 doctors are we're going to see if it's stable enough. And it's like, it's really unfortunate because it's so glorified, but it's really not a fun event. It's really not, there's not many players that you'll hear go through it and be like, man, that was really a great experience. I enjoyed that.
How nerve-wracking is it when you're just in that moment's waiting? Because obviously so much weight is put on the 40-yard dash. Like especially if you're in that second group, you got to watch all these guys go and you're just waiting, knowing your time to walk the plank is at some point here in the next hour or two.
Right. I mean, it was frustrating. I mean, it wasn't really frustrating. It was just, it is what it is for me because you know who you are. You've run, you've trained this whole time. I know I'm a 4.4, 4.5 guy, but we had freaking 3 4.2s in my group. so you're sitting there like, hey, I'm not as fast as those
for me.
Yeah, I'm not as fast as those guys, but I promise you I can play. I swear I can play. I swear if you just give me a chance, I'll play well. But I'm not running 4.2. But I'll get guys covered. They will not be, but I'm not running 4.2. So we had DeMarcus Van Dyke, Buster Screen, Pat Peterson, like all blaze down the track. And then I just, go get there, 4.5. All right. That's what I got for you.
Great form, like though,
Right. But it's not a very fun event. It's very nerve-wracking. The whole process, even going through the draft and when you're drafted, because it's so much unknown. There's thousands of guys going into the draft, and only 360 or so are getting picked. And you don't know when your name's getting called or if it's getting called at all. So you're sitting there and, people are trying to plan parties and plan this and plan that. And you're just sitting there hoping that you get your name called, and it's, some guys get their name called, some guys don't, and some guys are still able to make a career out of it, but it's just not a fun process. You look back and you're thankful for it, thankful for the opportunity, thankful for it, but it's the longest off season of your life. It's the longest year of your life.
Yeah. I mean, you had to wait a little bit going 5th round. I mean, how much, I know the answer, but like how much does having to wait and go 5th round, how much did that impact your mentality going into your career?
Yeah, I mean, it had a ton of impact. I mean, we talked about it throughout my entire career. It puts a chip on your shoulder, it frustrates you, but it's probably not as much as the guys who didn't get called at all. It's one of those things. It drives you, it pushes you, and you never forget it. All right, appreciate you, Mitchell. It's different. Good luck to all the prospects. I'm sure throughout this offseason we'll talk about them. We'll break down their film. We'll probably have some of them on the show. It's going to be interesting. I'm trying to give them a heads up what to expect.
Well, Richard, it's been another great week. We'll be back at it again next week. Apologize about the last week's absentee on a little vacation. Myself in Scottsdale, Richard in Cabo. So we'll be delivering it going forward here. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Ease the traffic.